Welcome to The Centurion's Path, a podcast about the life and the trials and tribulations of those who serve. This podcast is about the heroes who protect our communities. To truly understand the path of the protector, tune in with AJ DeAndrea and John McDonald, two nationally known leaders who live the Centurion's Path every day.
Thank you all for joining us today. To our sponsor for today's podcast, Safe Haven Defense, preserving property, protecting lives, providing peace of mind. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 12 or 13 of Centurion's Path. We are honored today to be joined by a very special guest, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. And Dave, thanks for hanging out with us today and walking.
It's my pleasure. And these are amazing times. We were talking about this, the podcast revolution. When we were kids, there were 3 networks and 1 or 2 city newspapers, a couple of magazines. If you didn't get on that, your voice was never heard. Now we've broken the monopoly, and it didn't happen easy. You guys aren't getting paid huge bucks for this for this podcast, but now we've got depth of information. And for you who present the podcast and for you who listen to the podcast and seek deeper levels of knowledge, I honor you. Back in the day, 26 years ago, I was on 60 Minutes in 2020, back when they were a big deal. And a week later, it meant nothing. I mean, it was just flash in the pan. Nobody could access it. It didn't exist. It just didn't exist. 100 years from now, people will be looking at these podcasts and saying, what were they thinking, what they were doing? And here they are. You guys are some of the major movers and shakers within this realm, experience. And so it's an honor to be on board today. And these are crazy times. And I'd like to share with the audience.
They are.
Yeah.
Can you share with us your background? Tell everybody.
Yeah. Enlisted in 1974, paratrooper, went to OCS, Army Ranger, infantry officer, company commander, division staff officer, got selected to teach at West Point, grad school en route. I actually wrote my book on killing in grad school. It's a question I've always wanted to know. We enlisted in 1974, Vietnam veterans all around us. We want to know what combat was like, and they wouldn't say. It's amazing how this taboo about combat. Yeah. Like hunters know, you don't hear the shot. You shoot a deer, you don't hear the shot, your ears don't ring. Now, how could we have had 500 years of gunpowder combat and not let people know just that littlest thing about what's going to happen in combat? So I started exploring this subject. I went to West Point. I taught 3 years there as a assistant professor in the last year. Went to the British Staff College, ran the ROTC program at Arkansas State. Clinton was president, Cold War was over, and I was having fun. And retired in 97. And in March of 97, my little hometown of Jonesboro, Arkansas, the Jonesboro school massacre happened. Really the first one. My book on killing came out in 95, and 2 years later, I predicted this generation of mass murderers. On killing, talks about the resistance to killing. People point some terrible crime in the news, say, that proves that mankind's a killer. Well, that's an outlier. It's 1 in a million. We're a nation of 1/3 of a billion people. That one terrible crime you heard about, that's 1 1/3 of a billion. So the hard thing to explain is the 99.99999% of our citizens who didn't kill anybody today. Explain that. Divorce, infidelity, layoff, traffic accidents. So there's this whole array of sociological, psychological, physiological factors that restrain killing. And in World War II, we found out most of the troops wouldn't pull the trigger. It was a training flaw. We taught them to shoot bullseye targets. No known case any bullseyes ever attacking our troops.
Right.
If you've been in the U.S. Armed Forces since the Korean War, been in law enforcement, never shot no bullseye. A man-shaped silhouette pops you a field of view. Hit the target, target drop. Stimulus response. And we brought the shooting rate from around 15 to 20% in World War II to 95% by Vietnam. And then with the state-of-the-art simulators, we brought the hit rate up. Between Vietnam and the current war, we brought the hit rate up to astounding levels. And oh, by the way, the video game's doing the exact same thing to our kids. So there, my book came out in 95, the Jonesboro School Massacre. I predicted a generation of mass murders were coming, that children committing crimes we never dreamed of. The next year was a Columbine massacres. After that one. And we got to stop calling big things shootings and stop calling those people shooters. They take pride in that name. You know, the Parkland school massacre, the killer said, I'm going to be the next shooter. He didn't say I'm going to be a murderer or a killer. I'm going to be the shooter. Shooting's an Olympic sport. You know, shooting baskets makes millions of dollars. Shooting movies. And in every other sense, shooting is an honorable, preferable thing. And then we take this word and we call the most evil acts shootings and shooters. And then we wonder why the media attacks the cop when you're the shooter. You know, shooting isn't a crime. Shooters aren't bad people. You know, murderers are bad people. And so then my book on combat rolled out prior to 9/11. The only people in war, if you will, the only people with life and death decisions. You know, peacetime military is like a football team, never plays a game. But the cops were out there and getting the acid test every day. And I was teaching them and training them, and my presentation evolved into what became On Combat. And my son went to his first combat tour. My boy just retired, 27 years, 10 combat deployments, 3 Bronze Stars. And I did the book On Combat as a book. I got a grandson in the Army now. But the book I literally wrote for my son going his first combat tours On Combat. And there's been 16 books since then. On Hunting just came out. I'll get you all a copy of it.
Excited for that.
Combat, I mean, really, you know, we need to talk about kind of that little spiritual aspect of what's going on out there, just from a secular, a humanistic standpoint. And then On Spiritual Warfare came out this year. A lot of other books, a couple of kids' books, and I've been on the road for over 26 years, over 200 days a year. My prayer, I'm 67 years old. My prayer is I do it for another 20 years. I want to stay in the fight. And here's the thing, guys. Homicides exploded like we've never seen before. Record number of cops murdered in the line of duty. All-time record number of cops shot in the line of duty. And we need to talk about why that is. But cops are under assault. Recruiting is down. Retention is down. And you got to ask the question. I'm a reserve cop. And why would anybody stay in the fight? Why would anybody keep doing this job? And I asked my audience, I asked them, what's the opposite of evil? And the opposite of evil is love. Evil's absence of love, just as darkness, absence of light. And we stay in the fight because we love our children, because we love our nation, we love our God, we love our way of life. And love means the worse it gets, the harder you fight. Yeah. And if we love everything that's precious to us, and we got to stand up and fight for it. Love means the worse it gets, the harder you fight. And what makes a great cop is empathy. Empathy is love with his shoes on, love in action. What if it was my family trapped in that burning building? What if it was my child that had been murdered? What if my spouse had been assaulted? What if my dad was laying there needing CPR? That's empathy. And these tragic times, we've got to equip ourselves with love. You know, waiting at home for me, I'm 67 years old. I just spent a week in Ukraine. My bride of 49 years, my high school sweetheart, just kissed me and sent me on the way with her blessings and asked me to give them her blessings. You know, she was, we've been married 49 years, come next month.
Wow. Congratulations.
She was 15. I was 17. I just turned 17 when I proposed to her.
Oh my gosh.
We are from Arkansas. Yeah, so 2 years later, she married a crazy Army paratrooper. Been in this ride with me for 49 years. I love her more than life itself. But we love our children. We love our God. We love our nation. And she sent me off to Ukraine and asked me to just give them her blessings. And that my bride sent me off to tell you in Ukraine that we believe in what you're doing and that we're so honored to be a part of what you're doing. And on behalf of my wife and I, so proud to be of some small service to the magnificent men and women of Ukraine. And they were eating up what I was giving them. You got to understand, they're getting down the third year of a terrible war. They've had 300,000 casualties. That includes wounded. And a nation that's just about an eighth of our size, 300,000 casualties. They're fighting for life. They've got You got bombed out. But I was in downtown Kiev, and you would have known there was a war. It's a great time to be a tourist. And the shops are open, and they're going, and you should go. You should just go visit Kiev. The only way to get there is fly to Warsaw, and take a train from Warsaw to Kiev, and you're just they're crazy. They don't bother going to the bomb shelter anymore. When the air raid sirens go off, they all go up on the roof and they watch the Patriots intercept the missiles, and there's a big fireworks show. Nobody goes to the bomb shelter. After 2 years of war, they don't go to the bomb shelter. They get on with their lives.
Right.
They're magnificent people, and I think we got an important lesson is just how fast your civilization can come unglued. Right. Just how fast peace and prosperity can suddenly disappear. And right there in the streets of Kiev, they stopped the Russian advance. The high point, the high watermark of the Russian invasion was right there in their capital. As the Russians came down the road of victory. Now, they should have known better to go down the Ukrainian road of victory than any other road besides that one. What about that? And right there, and there's a spot marked downtown Kiev and the battle and the ones who lost their lives right there. And it's just amazing. They've got a display of this main area. They've got all these flags, and every flag, little blue and orange flag, little blue and yellow flags. Every one of them is a soldier killed in the war, and it's just a sea of them that going across there. They've got burned out tanks, and they got a real sense of humor. They got all these burned out tanks and things that have been, kind of set up and organized that were in the battle for Kiev. And then they got this little car that got caught in the crossfire and it's shot all to hell. They put it right there in the little blue car and everything else. And they got an incredible sense of humor about everything. They've got one of their statues is like this saint, right? They got the saint, and they gave her a great big set of body armor. So she's this big old set of body armor.
Oh my God.
Incredible people. They're just amazing people. And
Dave, what brought you there?
Well, my book on combat was translated in Ukrainian and in last year, and then it was up for award this year, and it won the Ukrainian Book of the Year award.
Oh, wow.
And so my publisher, from the very beginning, I told my publisher I want to be there. Just give me a chance to talk to him. I don't think he really understood what I was able to do. I told him I'm a good writer, but I'm a really, really good speaker. And we had a great translator, and a lot of them know English, and we had a rhythm going, and it was powerful, and it was effective and uplifting. And they talked about bringing me back out there. Since, even without the book winning the award, it just was such a big hit. And it's so reaffirming. When I started teaching, when the war began in 2001, I'm teaching Navy SEALs and special forces that are back from the war. I thought, who the hell am I to teach these guys? And what I learned was that the more experience they have, the more they value what you have to give them. I know you guys have seen that. The hardest class is baby cops.
Yes.
A class of new police cadets. They don't know what they don't know. So anyway, that's Ukraine. And they can tell you how fast your will come unglued. And I think the path is open to do more. I'd love to do the same thing in Israel. People just don't realize what we've got to give. I mean, you don't hear the shots, and you see all the combat veterans in the audience say, whoa, yeah, about tunnel vision and slow motion time and being able to see the bullet, about memory gaps and memory distortions, and how important the debriefing is to fill in the memory gaps and sort out the memory distortions. But most of all, to separate the memory from the emotions. You've all heard of CISM, critical and stress management. I teach at the International Conference in Baltimore most years, and we all sit around the table and we talked about what happened. We fill in the memory gaps, sort out the memory distortions. But here's the important point. Every time somebody starts to become emotional, the sympathetic nervous system is beginning to take off. You stop, take a big swig of water, and regain control. And from the very beginning, you separate the memory from the emotions. Re-experiencing the event is not PTSD. It's normal.
Right.
How you deal with it will decide whether or not it becomes PTSD. So that was, that's in 5 minutes or so. That was my presentation over and over again. We did 2 or 3 a day for a week straight, traveling all across Ukraine. And then they were just absorbing it in bigger and bigger classes. And I was just at one of the it was Alabama. They call it TASRO, the Alabama SRO Association. Otherwise, it would be ASRO. But we had the wonderful lady in charge there had been elected as president of NASRO, and Mo was there, and they're working on. They've been contacted to train a couple of thousand Ukrainian SROs. I told them, put me on, coach. I want to be part of that. And it's not easy. You got to, like traveling in a train from Warsaw to Kiev all by itself is an adventure. And nobody speaks the language, and you got these bunks. You got this triple bunker thing, and it's crazy. But we live in amazing times, guys. And the world can come unglued that fast if you're not ready.
Yep.
Let's take a break for a minute.
Yeah.
Defense, preserving property, protecting lives, providing peace of mind.
Hello, Centurion Path listeners. My name is Dana McClay, and I'm coming to you live from Alexandria, Virginia, with an exciting invitation. Campus Safety Conference will be in Atlanta in just a few weeks. As a stakeholder actively invested in the safety and security of your community, this conference may be a fit for you. Campus Safety brings together K through 12 and higher education professionals for 3 days of networking, education, peer-based trainings, and vendor showcases. We have over 500 people joining us for this 2024 event, but it won't be complete without you. Consider joining us July 8th through 10th in Atlanta, Georgia at the Omni downtown. For more information, visit campussafetyconference.com. I hope to see you soon.
Well, I guess one of my questions is, when you talk about the world coming unglued, you see what's happening in this country.
Yeah.
And talk to us about that. Are we at this place where we're at a precipice right now? It sure feels like it to me. But I'd really be interested in hearing your thoughts.
Yeah. First off, understand it's far worse than we know. If people come away from this podcast with just one piece of info, actionable info, understand this, then the murder rate is being held down by medical technology.
Right.
And the number of dead people is a lie, because every year we save ever more lives. Tourniquets alone, cop slaps on a tourniquet saves a crime victim's life. You prevented a murder. Tourniquets alone have cut the murder rate in half in just the last decade. It's like, imagine somebody said, your grandpa made 20 cents an hour. This job pays $20 an hour. You're 100 times better off than your grandpa. Well, we all immediately see the lie. We all know about inflation. But when somebody said, well, yeah, the murder rate's up, but it's not as bad as the 1960s. No. It's much, much worse. So we had the Ferguson effect. The year of Ferguson, 2015, 2016, homicides exploded, equal to any annual increase we have ever seen. And when we allow for medical technology, it's actually 3 or 4 times worse than anything we've ever seen. And it was a direct relationship the Ferguson. And then we had 5 dead cops in Dallas. President Obama went to the funeral of 5 dead cops, said, stop this stupid stuff. He said, cops are not the enemy. And it lulled off. And then we had the Minneapolis effect, the George Floyd effect. And the highest annual increase we've ever seen is about a 12% annual increase. We've seen that a few times over the years. And then in 15, 16, we've seen a 12% annual increase in homicides, which, if you allow for medical technologies, vastly worse than it looks. Right. But in 2020, we had a 30% annual increase in homicides. I mean, the highest we've ever seen is 12% throughout as far back as the data goes. And then we saw a 30% annual increase in homicides in 2020. When you allow for medical technology, vastly worse. And it's the George Floyd effect. It's the sick, twisted narrative that the media has that the cops are the bad guys. And I can tell you exactly how many people the media murdered. I can show you the number of dead people and how many more dead people, and how many people they're responsible for. The blood's on their hands. And so I show a chart that came from, it was in the New York Times, but they buried it and never mentioned it again. They said that the explosion of homicides in 2020 is unprecedented, but they buried it in a Sunday supplement and never mentioned it again because it points a finger right back at them.
Right.
And you got to understand this narrative. This is the twisted, sick narrative. The world divides into the oppressor and the oppressed. And the cops are the oppressors. And the criminals are the oppressed. And that is the most sick, twisted possible narrative. And somewhere around 2021, the New York Times said, wait a minute, this points a finger right back at us. And the media turned these killers into celebrities, part of the thing. The Oxford, Michigan school killer. The kid said in his little journal, I want the world to remember me. What's his motive? The Parkland, Florida school massacre. The Parkland killer. He said, yeah, it said, I'm going to be the next school shooter. He didn't say I'm going to be the school murderer. I'm going to be a shooter. 2020 or whatever the year was, he said, when you see me on the news, you'll know who I am. What's this kid's motive? What's his motive? Yeah. To be on the news, and the media feeds that. I give the example of the in New Zealand, they had a series of mosque massacres. This guy went to 2 different mosques, right, live streamed himself just slaughtering people. And this guy was mimicking an attack that was done in Norway. The guy got on the island, a youth camp in Norway, and just slaughtered. The all-time record solo gun massacre was on this island in Norway. Nobody had a gun. Now find a place where nobody has a gun, and that's where your mass murder is going to happen. So the Prime Minister of New Zealand said, and this is really good, she said, this man did what he did for notoriety, for fame. And she said, we will not give it to him. She said, New Zealand will never say this man's name. New Zealand will never show this man's picture. She said, New Zealand will not even give him his name. Boom. Somebody gets it. Make him nothing. Make him nobody. And for the first week, tell us a name, show us a picture, then boom, shut it down. The media has his blood on their hands. They fed the sick movies and TV shows. One of the most evil movie in recent years is Denzel Washington in Training Day. The most beloved black cop plays the most beloved black actor plays a corrupt, violent cop, Denzel Washington. And I tell people, the movie Jaws traumatized a generation. And it really did. A generation was terrified. And then sharks became an endangered species. Who want to go kill a shark and put it up on the wall? Well, I tell people, be very careful who you tell your children to hate and fear. We taught a generation to hate and fear sharks, and now sharks are an endangered species. We taught a generation to hate and fear cops. And now we have an all-time record number of cops murdered in the line of duty, 2021. All-time record number of cops shot in the line of duty just last year. We've never seen anything like this. And they've been taught to hate and fear cops. They play the murder simulators, the video games. They get this twisted media in which the killers are turned into celebrities. I was a West Point psychology professor, and we had a little segment on cluster suicides. In the late 70s, early 80s, they found out if the media reported a teen suicide, we get more suicides. Kids will commit suicide to get in the news. And we know you must not have a memorial service for a suicide victim in your school, or you'll get more suicides. Kids will commit suicide to get in the news. And the media did the most cowardly thing they've ever done. They all got together and said, okay, we won't report teen suicides. We won't say we're not doing it. And we won't report that we've done any harm. And now they're doing the exact same thing by turning the killers into celebrities. And I'll tell you what's coming next. I pray that I'm wrong. But what's left to stun us? What's left to shock us? We're going to see daycare massacres. China's had repeated daycare massacres. Belgium had a daycare massacre. Just last year, Brazil had a daycare massacre. And when somebody gets in that daycare and slaughters a daycare full of children, they're going to be famous. And we'll all know their name and we'll all see their face. And that's why they did it. And the media has this blood on their hands. And what do? They blame it on the guns and they blame it on the evil cops. That they are the problem. And we're so here is the takeaway solution. Here's the answer. We're a very rich nation. When things go wrong, we throw money at it. Now, World War II, we threw money at it. The Cold War, we outspent the Russians. The pandemic, what we do? Trillions of dollars thrown at the problem. When the public begins to realize just how bad violent crime is, they'll start throwing money at the problem. And you'll see cops get paid what they deserve to be paid. My dad started in the beat in 1962 in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And if he'd have seen the kind of money cops make, even allowing for inflation, he couldn't imagine cops getting paid that kind of money, even allowing for inflation. Well, I'm telling you, in a decade or two, you can't imagine the money that cops will be making. I'm talking the level of medical professionals. The person who decides whether or not to shoot your kid should be the best trained, best paid, best qualified guy on the planet. And it's coming. But people have to understand how bad it is. And here it is in one sentence. Just like we have in inflation-adjusted dollars, we need medically adjusted murders. And when we do that, it will transform the way we see the situation. Grab your politicians, grab your law enforcement leaders, get the word out, and put the word out on what happened in 2015 and 2016. Put the word out on what happened in 2020. I'll show you the data. I'll give you the charts. And get the word out just how bad it is so the public will throw money at the problem. Right now, the elections are driving the train, and they're not going to talk about how bad it is. They're just cover it. And it points a finger back at them. It can't keep going. The media is the problem. And the cops, it's the evil cops. It's the evil guns. No, it's them. But I have faith in our nation, faith in our way of life. And here's kind of the important aspect of all of that. You know, I wrote the book on spiritual combat, Bulletproof Marriage, 90-day devotional, Christian Book Award finalist. And I tell people, this is not about faith. This is not about religion. It's an existential question every human being asks. I tell all my first responders, you see every terrible thing that happens. That's your job, is to go to the terrible thing. And you can't help but ask, how could a loving God allow these things to happen? And the answer is really, really important. We are not God's puppets. A loving God would not stand over you like a helicopter parent for a lifetime and protect you from every bad thing that happens. Have you ever heard, if you love something, let it go if it comes back at yours? That's how much God loves us. He loves us enough to let us make our own decisions. And that means a lot of people make really bad decisions and a lot of bad things happen. You say, God, why don't you do something? He says, I did. I sent you. And law enforcement, I love the idea of the centurion, because when the centurion came to Jesus, he said, you don't have to come see my child. He said, he wanted to hear of this servant. He said, I too am a man under authority. I send one go and he goeth, another come and he cometh. He said, if you say my servant is healed, that's all I need. And Jesus said, I have not seen so great a faith in all of Israel. And that's the centurion. And the first non-Jew to become a Christian that we know of was in Acts chapter 10. And Philip was sent. God sent him to take this centurion and his whole household. And are you sure the Gentiles had a centurion? Yes. Being, one of Jesus' last commandments before he's arrested and executed. In Luke 22:36, he told his disciples, he said, look, I told you before, don't even take your cloak. Now I tell you, sell your cloak and buy a sword. What would Jesus do? One of the last things he told us to do is arm ourselves. So it is very appropriate to be the centurion and to be a believer. and to be the Bible tells us that the magistrate beareth not the sword in vain, that the law enforcement officer is God's agent for wrath, and that you're the good guys and justice is right and the criminals are wrong. So believe in who you are and believe in what you do, and have faith in our nation. But again, the final point is this: in the end, something terrible, no matter how hard you pray, we're all going to die. Don't curse God because he doesn't answer your prayer the way you think he should. We're all going to die. And sooner or later, every nation falls. How much longer a nation got? 100 years, 1,000 years? Sooner or later, every nation falls. Eventually, our sun will die, but eternity continues. If you take a deep breath and consider the fact of eternity, then the things of this world won't pull you down. From a Christian perspective, this is not our home. We're soldiers deployed to a war zone, and when we die, we get to go home. And our mission here on earth, the commander's intent, is to love God and love people. In normal warfare, you win in large part by killing them. In spiritual warfare, you win by saving them. And our mission is the Great Commission, and that's my latest 2 books in a nutshell. But have faith, again, in the long haul. All things pass, but keep your eye on the big picture and don't be pulled down by the things of this world. And that's kind of been my message, and people seem to be real receptive to it. As we love our God, as we love our nations, we love our children, we walk out that door and give 100%.
Such a powerful message, and just needs to be heard over and over again. When you look at these young officers that are making the decision, and they struggle with it. Do I want to go into this profession? Do I not want to go into this profession? But as you know, this is a calling.
Amen.
And right, Amen. It's a calling. And so then they're there, and like you said, they're maligned at every corner. And to have that perspective that you just shared with us, and to be able to hold on to that and see that bigger picture. And you'll try to talk to some of the younger officers, and especially here in Colorado, they've just eviscerated this profession here, left and right, every chance they get. But to tell them that it will change. It will change. We will keep moving forward. Stay the course, stay focused, understand the calling, why we're here, right? And if we're doing a job,
here's the great danger. We all remember pre 9/11. I asked how many were cops pre 9/11, and post Rodney King. Recruiting was so bad that they were waiving felonies. Across America, they were waiving felonies to get people to be cops. Gordon Graham talks about Rampart scandal, LAPD, terrible criminal behavior, Rampart's division. Gordy says, Rampart scandal, executive summary, page 1, number 1. We probably shouldn't have hired a cop with a felony record.
Yeah.
Right. Better no cop than a bad cop. And we got to wrap our mind around that. Or, tattoos, times change. Grooming standards, things change. You got asthma, the Army won't take it, we'll take you. You're a little overweight, look, we'll grow old and we'll grow slow, but we can still be one hell of a shot,
Right.
But when it comes to moral and ethical failures, better no cop than a bad cop. And we cannot lower the standards. We all saw that incident in Memphis when those cops just beat that kid to death and left him there to die. It was black cops beating a black kid to death, and it's twisted that oh well, that's no big deal. It's twisted that didn't get the same recognition that George Floyd incident did.
Right.
But that was a recruiting failure. There were people wearing that uniform that were totally not qualified. That was a training failure, and that was a leadership failure. And it was that close. If it had been in, well, hopefully no other city would lower the standards so badly. Well, we need minorities. Well, yes, we really do need minorities, but you must not lower the standards to do it, because then the things come unglued. And we got to maintain the standards. Don't lower the standard. We've got to police our own and get rid of the bad ones as fast as we can, and police our own in these times, because it'll be caught on camera. And we'll all pay a terrible price for it.
Dave, you talk about failure of leadership, and that's something AJ and I have talked a lot about in recent months, about the failures of leadership that seem like it's compounding at such an incredible pace. And where are we failing to develop leaders, and how do we change that paradigm where we're back to leaders making good decisions and doing what they need to do to rally those around them and lift people up instead of put them down.
It's going to take a time. It's going to take a generation. The great thing about America is we're 50 laboratories for democracy. How'd the pandemic work out for Florida versus New York? How'd it go for Texas versus California? Who's immigrating from which states to which states, and which businesses are moving from here to there? It's really kind of faith in our system, faith in our way of life, that we can work our way through this. And when it comes to law enforcement, what do we have? We have well over 10,000 police chiefs, like 15,000. We have way over 1,000 sheriffs out there. We're not 50 laboratories of democracy. When it comes to law enforcement, we're 15,000 laboratories of democracy. And every sheriff answers only to the local voters. And every police chief answers only to the locally elected officials. And that's our great strength, is that we're decentralized. One of the interesting things is, of all these school massacres, multiple homicide by a juvenile in the school, and it's worldwide. I've got a newspaper clipping that Russia had a school massacre, 15 dead in a school in Russia. And then it says, this is the fourth school massacre, or the fourth school shooting. This is the fourth school massacre in that part of Russia in just the last 15 months. How many people knew there were 4 school massacres in one subset of Russia in just 15 months? It's worldwide. And part of the media lies, it's only happening here. Right. And so we get the word out on how bad it is, and we turn the tide and have faith in our way of life and have faith in our institutions. That we've already seen the cycle turn once. We're old enough to see us go from pre 9/11, post Rodney King, post 9/11, when the nation put it back together. I don't know what it will take for another 9/11, but guys, the terrorist threat is through the roof. And when they attack, they're probably going to attack schools, the daycares. That's what they do around the world. They don't pee in your water. They come kill your kids.
Right.
And, we saw Israel, the October 7th attacks. But why didn't they hit schools? Why? They were slaughtering children. They were slaughtering women. Why didn't they hit schools? Because Israeli schools and Israeli daycares are all fortresses. And they went to the places that people can't shoot back. They went to the place where people weren't prepared for them. And the one place in America where across a lot of America, nobody has a gun, is our schools and our daycares. We couldn't have done a better job than fight them to come kill our kids. We were in Afghanistan for 20 years. For 20 years, we hunted the Taliban down, and we went in their caves, we went in the home, we killed the Taliban, and then we left. And we left the Taliban in charge. No hard feeling, guys. We left them with an entire nation to train and deploy and equip. We left them with $7 billion of military equipment, a burning desire for revenge. And oh, by the way, they've already been around this block once. Russia was in Afghanistan for 10 years. Russia left. They followed them home. And we got the Bestland school massacre. Probably the single most horrendous school massacre in history. 333 dead in a school in Russia. And it was a direct cause and effect between abandoning Afghanistan and launching from Afghanistan to launch these attacks. We got Boko Haram across North Africa. The very name, Boko Haram. Boko is book, any book other than the Quran. Haram means it's a religious word, forbidden. And the most common translation is Western schooling is evil. And Boko Haram has wiped out daycares and schools across Northern Africa by the hundreds. In Afghanistan in 2009 alone, that Hezbollah or the Taliban attacked 600 times in 1 year alone. 2009, 600 times the Taliban attacked schools, their own schools and their own kids and their own nation, 600 times a year.
Wow.
And they're coming like a freight train. Hamas is angry. You have people all across the nation of, oh, you're supporting Israel, and they want to come and get us. And the terrorist threat is through the roof. 10 million illegal aliens have come across the border in just the last 4 years. Lord knows what they're going to do when the time comes. And all of this is hanging in the balance. And the centurion is holding the line. As Rome was rocking back and forth, the centurion was the one who represented the might and authority of Rome, the strength of what was still strong and true. One of the great writers of the Roman Empire, towards the end of the Roman Empire, he said Rome began to fall when the centurions stopped wearing their armor all day long. And I was at that TASRO, Alabama School Resource Officer Conference, and we had a TAC team that came and wanted to do a photo, and they're all wearing their full body armor. They came to that, they wear their full TAC gear. This is what we live in. And I said, you guys are magnificent. You're wearing the body armor, you're walking the walk. Yeah, we put on a little weight, but we're still one hell of a shot, and my dog will catch you and I'll shoot you. I don't have to be fast, my dog will do it. But these centurions are out there wearing the body armor. And I tell them, you know why the shield is a symbol of a cop? It is a direct intentional reference to the knights of old. There really were knights, better yet, there really were paladins. Not all knights were good by any stretch. A paladin tried to be good, a virtuous, honorable knight. Have gun will travel, right? Have gun will travel, reads a card of the man. A knight without armor in a savage land. Paladin, paladin, where do you roam? Paladin, paladin, far, far from home. There really were knights, really were paladins. Gunpowder defeated armor, and the knights went away.
Yeah.
Today, for the first time in centuries, their men and women wake up every morning. They don armor. They hang the weapon on the hip, and they hang that shield on the left side. And on that shield, and that star, the star is just, why it's got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points. The star is just the sun gleaming off the shield. It's just a reflection of it means the same thing. And they wake up in the morning and they pin that shield, that chunk of armor on the left side, and they go forth and they do good deeds in the land. If that is not a knight, if that is not a paladin, you tell me what is. Right. And this dark age is a new knight, a new paladin. But something very bad is happening because we're just depolicing entire parts of our nation now. In 2021 was the all-time record number of cops murdered in the line of duty. There was a big burst of cops murdered in Prohibition. But if we compare no body armor, medical technology, they don't even compare. In the late 60s, early 70s, the war riots and the race riots, another burst of dead cops. But again, we can't even compare with the 60s. What's happening now is much, much worse. In spite of body armor, in spite of tactics, in spite of medical technology, record number of cops murdered. But we have 2 crime reports. We have the UCR, what cops report to the FBI. And then we got the crime victimization survey. And every year we call thousands of people and say, were you a victim of a crime? And we have never seen the disparity. Cops are reporting ag assault is down 3%. Survey says it's up over 100%.
Right.
And what's happening is that part of the town, if the cops say, we know how to not be assassinated. We know how to not be executed. We just don't go to that part of town. That part of town isn't reporting crime, and the cops aren't going in that part of town. And the social contract is breaking down. And so these are knights going forth to do good deeds. The cop is the bodyguard for the poor. The cop is the protector of the poor. They can't protect themselves. The biggest boom in America is the bodyguard business and the private security business. The rich will always be safe, and the politicians will always be safe. But who protects the poor? And thank God we live in a nation where we can be our own protectors. I am my family's secret service, but it's all coming unglued. But the knights in this dark age are rising to the challenge, and they wear that shield and they bear that armor and they go forth and do good deeds. And I am so incredibly proud of them and so honored to be able to stand up in front of them every day and encourage them and uplift them.
Yeah. You brought up a point, and when we talk about just the vulnerability that's here, if we look, we should be worldly, right? I mean, and I think for the most part we try to be, but the recent attack in Moscow, that was low tech.
Yeah.
That was low tech. and look at the damage that was caused. And yet here we are still in our own country, like you said, we're demeaning and we're pushing those cops down, and a person for their own personal safety.
Yeah.
We're regulating that and not allowing them to be able to protect themselves. And it's really kind of scary times, especially, like I said, look at that. If you actually go back and look at that attack, it was low tech. They didn't have anything sophisticated. I mean, it was.
And then look what happened October 7th in Israel. It was the same thing on a vast scale. Right. And it's I'm telling people for a long time, we're having a beer with little Jimmy Jihadi after a bad day of waterboarding, and we say, hey, Jimmy, what's the big plan? What do you got down the road? And they always talk about the perfect day. And what's the perfect day? Well, one great example is the Sepoy Mutiny in India. That was in 1856. But the British had the Indian troops and they had the Muslim troops. And they kind of played them off of each other, and the Muslims rose up and the Indians would bring them down, the Hindus, and the Hindus rose up, the Muslims take them down. But both sides rose up against England, the British, the Raj, and India at the same time. And it was October 7th on a vast scale. I mean, entire cities were wiped out. The shop owners who had been friends to these British women since they were children, they'd come into the shop and they'd murder them and drag them behind the counter, murder the next one, the next one. They would attack the soldiers, murdered their officers, and it's called the Sepoy Mutiny. And it was their perfect day when they all rise up. Well, the British regained control, and when they regained control, they were brutal. These were mutineers, and there's some terrible, terrible, brutal crimes. But today it's called the First Indian Rebellion. It's not a mutiny. It's a rebellion. It's a revolution, just like us in 1776. And that's their dream. What happened on October 7th is their model for what they would like to see happen. They've talked about the perfect day ever since we've been interviewing them and talking to them about what's coming down the road. And October 7th is the model of what they want to do. What happened in Moscow was just one tiny part. They had that Nova. It was an outdoor musical festival that they attacked in conjunction. The October 7th attacks were like the Moscow massacre on steroids combined with 100 other little massacres, all happening at the same time. Right. And that's their dream. And we don't know what's coming down the road, but Israel was completely blindsided. They were right next door, and Israel was totally blindsided by it. Yeah. And you think we couldn't be blindsided by it? You think it couldn't happen someday and come out of nowhere? Our current administration, our current DOJ, we should have great concerns as to whether or not something like that could happen. 10 million unvetted illegal aliens coming across the border. So you're so right as to what could happen. And what's the answer? Carry your gun off duty. Be prepared. Be ready to go. We've got case after case on October 7th. We're just one armed person was able to turn the entire attack. There's incredible acts of heroism where just one person there had a gun, was able to save countless numbers of people and being able to fight back. And that's what they fear. They fear the people who will fight back. They will choose the place where nobody has a gun. And that means the cops are the only ones that can carry a gun, and they got to be ready.
Right. One of your books, Dave, is on the sheepdog.
Yeah. Yeah.
You talk about the sheepdog and how that relates to what you were just talking about.
Yeah. You know what? We've got a sheepdog kids book, and you can get it to Amazon. My website is grossmanontruth.com. The truth on killing, the truth on combat, grossmanontruth.com. And the sheepdog kids book really chokes people up. It's got a lot of my lines in there. The wolf lives to destroy, the sheepdog lives to protect. And the sheep will die to protect the ones they love. Only the sheepdog loves enough to die for other people's loved ones. But that don't make them hero. They're a hero because they walk out the door every day prepared to lay down their life. And this line's going on my gravestone. It says, sometimes the greatest love is not to sacrifice your life, but to live a life of sacrifice. And that's what cops are doing. They're living that life of sacrifice. So we got the Sheepdog Kids book, and this whole sheep, the wolf, the sheepdog thing came out of my book on combat right there. It became, it really took off. It's like this phenomenal concept. And I did an interview recently. I said, why did the sheepdog thing take off like that? And I have the U.S. government trademark for the term sheepdog as a protector. And it's, well, first off, we love dogs. We're dog crazy people. We love dogs. People get more angry because a police canine is killed than a cop is killed. And the idea of being the sheepdog, we're not superior. Dogs are not superior. We rise to the challenge. We can embrace that. The idea that there's wolves out there, people have embraced that, and it's really gone well. And we took the Sheepdog Kids book, and we took it a step further. It's all sheepdogs. It follows the sheepdog model, but why mommy carries a gun, and it's just such a beautiful little book with such great artwork. Anything you'd want your little sheepdog to know. You find a gun, stop, don't touch. 4 universal gun safety laws, Second Amendment, famous sheepdogs throughout history. It's all in the book. And that sheepdog model, we just kind of run with it because we can embrace that. We can be the sheepdog, and that's our goal. It's a good model. We're not the wolf, and we're not superior. The sheepdog isn't superior. We've got leadership that says, well, I want to be the shepherd. Well, the shepherd decides when the sheep are born and when they die. The shepherd has mutton stew. The shepherd fleeces them once a year. I know who my great shepherd is. It's just a metaphor, and there's even some biblical foundation for being the shepherd. But I worry about people who say, "Oh, I'm the shepherd." Well, they're sheep, and you're a shepherd. Well, you're human, and they're animals. And that's not good. But I'm just another critter. I'm just a sheepdog. And I talk about being God's faithful dog. When we get to heaven, we will understand things we cannot comprehend. And God will embrace us as his beloved children. But right now, it's all I can think of is to be God's dog. I got a gray muzzled old chocolate lab. I let her off the leash. She'll run to the neighbor's house and roll in something stinky, but I still love her. Yeah. And God sees every stupid thing we do, and he still loves us. But here's the key. Will Rogers said, if you get to thinking you're a man of some importance, try telling another man's dog what to do. Now, if you ever did that, try to tell the dog would look at you. If the dog could talk, here's what he'd say. I don't know much. I'm just a dog. I know this. I'm not your dog. Yeah. And when we're God's dog, when we're God's faithful dog, the one thing we can do when the evil one comes to us, just say, hey, I'm not your dog.
I love it.
And one day the sheepdog will find a rest at the feet of the great shepherd, and we yearn to hear those words, well done, thou good and faithful servant.
Yeah. I love it.
Powerful stuff.
I'm looking at my gray muzzled lab right here, sitting next to
you. There you go. They give us such joy. Oh, and the idea of being God's dog, I can wrap my mind around that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great.
Well, I have to tell you, this has been an amazing conversation, and
let's help get the word out best we can, guys. It's been one of the best condensed representation what I'm talking about. Ping us on it and make a note to me and Mike, my right hand guy there, that this is a good one, because we'll push this on our social media and get the word.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, let's really get the word out for you guys. You're two of my personal heroes. You're just amazing people who have been in times of great turmoil, who rose to the challenge and become national leaders. Like you're my personal heroes, and to be able to get the word out about that is so good. But just kind of a closing point. We talk about the being God's dog, and one day he'll embrace us. But the final line is, I tell people, heaven's going to be awesome. If I get there first, I'll save you a place by the fire.
Perfect.
Cool.
I love it.
God bless you guys.
Same to you. So we close every one of our podcasts out with this toast. So you can use your water. I've got water in my mug here. John's got his water right there. And we close it out with these words. We've changed them a little bit, but I think that these words go back to the Roman legions, right? They've been translated and changed and moved, but this is how we close everyone out. And so with that, to us and those like us, the centurions, Damn few left.
Long may they reign.
Thank you to Safe Haven Defense for sponsoring today's podcast and for walking the Centurion's path with us. Safe Haven Defense, preserving property, protecting lives, providing peace of mind.